Okay. So thanks ever so much, Mark, for agreeing to do this. Just so we've got it on audio, would you mind just stating, it sounds like I'm doing a police interview, would you mind just stating your name and your job title?
Mark Little, Head of Sustainability, Sourcing and Waste Policy at Tesco.
Great, thank you. Could I just ask if you could just explain very briefly what's your role in Tesco in relation to food waste?
So I sit in group communications team. Within that department, I sit within the campaigns team. So we run campaigns, communication campaigns on big issues. I'm within that team the policy expert on food sustainability, sourcing and waste policy. But in terms of food waste, I've led the Tesco's food waste reduction programme since we kicked it off back in 2013, since we announced that we wanted to lead on reducing food waste globally.
Brilliant. Okay, so that was my next question actually, is how long you've been in, similar role, but that's fine, that's covered. Prior to that, had you worked in a similar role elsewhere?
So prior to the food waste role, I led on our product carbon footprinting and supply chain carbon reduction work, and then prior to that I actually joined Tesco as an environmental consultancy on secondment to lead those programmes. So I was working for a company called ERM, Environmental Resources Management, before, which is a large environmental consultancy.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you. Okay, so overall, if you could give a rough figure on it, I'm presuming you're going to say your whole career actually, but how long have you worked in a role that had some involvement in retail food waste, even if it was just sort of periphery?
Probably since 2008, 2009, something like that.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Thank you. Again, I kind of know the answer to this one, but it would be quite good to hear it from you. Does your organisation have a formalised standalone food waste policy, or is it integrated into?
Standalone, it's clearly standalone.
Yeah. The next bit sort of says, can you tell me briefly a bit about it? But I mean, can you sort of summarise it in?
So I think the key thing, so we announced back in 2013 that we wanted to lead on reducing food waste globally. We were very clear that this wasn't just about our own operations. If you look at where food waste occurs, yes, physically, more happens in the supply chain and more happens in customers' homes. A relatively very small amount physically happens in retail. But this isn't us passing the buck and saying the problem's elsewhere. We have a shared responsibility for that waste, and the solution lies in working in partnership with suppliers, helping customers as well as tackling it in our own operations. So our programme is Farm to Fork. I think some of the key principles have been around developing new insights, which we then base our action on. So for example, back in 2013, we were the first retailer to publish levels of food waste for our own operations and show where the hotspots were, so a category breakdown. We also looked at our top 25 products. I think since then, two key developments, building on the Farm to Fork programme. The first is we set a target that by the end of 2017, that's the end of this year, calendar year, no food that's safe for human consumption will go to waste inside the UK Tesco operation. And the second thing is our CEO Dave Lewis chairing an international coalition of leaders called Champions 12.3, who have been tasked themselves with driving progress towards achieving target 12.3. And how are they trying to do that? I think that there's three elements. There's adopt the target, there's measure against the target and be transparent, and then based on that insight there's act, so target, measure, act. So I think if you bring all those things together, that's our current position on food waste.
That's fantastic. It's really, really clear. Thank you. Okay, so if I go on to the specific sections, now what we've done is we've broken it down into section 1 is minimise food waste, section 2 is reuse for human consumption, so i.e. redistribution.
Yeah.
Section 3 is recycle, so AD, compost, etc. So we'll try and take it section by section, but if things get a bit kind of, overlapped, then that's absolutely fine.
Just before you go into that, it's
Yeah.
worth, so I've got a blog on the Tesco PLC website, it's probably worth looking at that blog and also just looking through the materials on the PLC website, because what it does is it pulls out some of the examples of best practice working with suppliers in our own operations and helping customers as well, whether it be around minimisation, redistribution, or getting things as high up managing the waste in an appropriate way and pushing it as high up the waste hierarchy as possible.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. I mean, some of this stuff, yes, I've read about what you're doing already, so we are aware of. It's more, I think, getting to the actual crux of why certain things are happening. So yeah, don't worry too much about the fine detail because I can pick up on that. But it's the broader things really. So if I start by looking at minimising waste, and just ask you, what would you say is your value proposition or your offer to customers, environment, society in terms of the way you minimise waste? Do you see what I mean with that?
Well, I can tell you how we're trying to minimise waste across the value chain.
It's more about what sort of image are you trying to put over to customers in terms of minimising?
It's not an image, it's about taking concrete action for a range of reasons and then communicating that action. So this isn't about image and PR, this is about doing the right thing for a number of reasons, some of which were set out, in fact, many of which were set out in the business case report that WRI launched earlier in the week. WRI Champions 12.3 launched. WRI, the Secretariat for the group.
Yeah, I saw a release on that.
In terms of why we're taking action, well, food waste is an issue that our customers and colleagues really care about. We all feel guilty about throwing away food. Partly because it's a waste of money, but also I think there's a realisation that so many people around the world are going hungry. So there's a food poverty angle, there's of course a global food security and an environmental angle as well. It's fundamentally, I think, for us about doing the right thing. No one wants to waste food. But underlying all of that is, of course, as was set out in the report earlier in the week, there is a clear business case as well for reducing food waste. Food waste costs the business money in our own operations and in dealings with our suppliers. It's in no one's interests if food is being wasted in the supply chain. And also, if we I think there's a huge opportunity if we can help customers reduce waste and save money. Research from WRAP shows that those customers, there is a customer loyalty element there, and also again a business case, because according to WRAP's analysis, half of that money saved is spent again in shops.
Absolutely.
And whether that's trading up or coming back to the same store, there's a clear business case, but fundamentally it's the right thing to do.
No, that's brilliant. Thank you. I think that initial question, you've actually gone on and answered quite a few of the others, which is great. That initial question, I possibly didn't phrase it in a very good in a very good way, but it's more about the value. You've kind of answered this, but the value you're creating for the customer, for society, for the environment. So when I say image, I don't mean image in a PR way. It's the value you're creating. So you've kind of answered that.
I think the value is that this is an issue that our customers, our colleagues, our suppliers, society feels very strongly about, and it comes back to the point about having a shared responsibility, and that shared responsibility isn't just across the value chain. There are people, groups outside of that value chain, like food waste campaigners, for example, activists, who we share this desire to do